Welcome to the Football Debates Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Debates. In this episode, we're going to break down the 2026 NFC football schedules. We're going to look at each team, where I think some of the difficulties may be for them, giving you a few thoughts on some of the teams, and giving you my thoughts on who may win each division. Don't forget to check out the same analysis for the AFC teams, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. So we're going to start with the NFC East and starting with the Dallas Cowboys. One thing I want to say right off the bat, I think they got a great pick at number 11 in safety Caleb Downs. I think he's going to be great for that defense, and I can see Dallas improving this year defensively and improving on their record overall. So they're going to start with week 3, I think is where their first difficult part of their schedule is going to be. They're going to be playing Baltimore at home, at Houston, Tampa Bay, at Green Bay, and at Philadelphia. That stretch, I think, is going to be a challenge for them. A lot of good defenses in there. Houston, which had the best defense in the league last year. Dallas playing in Houston, the Battle of Texas. I think is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a challenge for the Cowboys offense, and we'll see what their defense can do. And then the Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Philadelphia games. Tampa Bay is playing for the NFC South title. Green Bay is going to be in the mix in the NFC North and in the playoffs. And then you have Philadelphia for the East Division. With Green Bay and Philadelphia back-to-back games, I don't see any letdown there. If I see it really any place as a trap game or where the Cowboys could have a letdown game, would be the Tampa game, even though it's at home. They get Houston, the Battle of Texas, then Tampa, then they go to Green Bay, the Micah Parsons reunion game, and then at Philadelphia, the big NFC East game. Later on in the year, weeks 12 through 17, is where the Cowboys have another stretch, could determine the NFC East or whether or not they get a playoff spot. Week 12, they play Philadelphia at home, and I think if Philadelphia or Dallas sweep those two games, that team is going to win the NFC East. After Philadelphia at home in week 12, then the Cowboys have Seattle on the road in week 13, then they're bye. Then at the Rams, Jacksonville, and the New York Giants at home. The Seattle and the Rams games, I think the Cowboys caught a break with a bye in between those. Those could be in positioning either for a number 1 seed in the NFC or for a playoff spot. Jacksonville game, I think, is going to be a challenge for the Cowboys if Jacksonville plays up to expectations this year. And then I listed the Giants as a tough game at the end of the year. The Giants under new coach John Harbaugh, I think, are going to get better as the year goes along. So barring any injuries, I think that's going to be a deciding game in the NFC East and potentially in the playoffs at the end of the year. Speaking of the Giants and new head coach John Harbaugh, first part of their schedule I think is manageable, which is good for them. And I think that they will have some time to gel with quarterback Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo coming back from injury, Malik Neighbors coming back from injury. Their first round pick, Arvell Reese, I think was a good pick. He's versatile. He can play all over on the defense. He can play inside linebacker, outside linebacker. He can be an edge rusher. He can drop back into coverage. He can rush the passer. I think that's a great fit for them. And then I thought they would take Caleb Downs at pick number 10 to shore up that secondary. I think part of me thinks that was a mistake, and now they're going to have to face him twice a year with Downs playing for Dallas. But the number 10 pick that the Giants made was for an offensive tackle out of Miami, one of the most physical, and some people had as the number 1 offensive lineman in the draft. That's a John Harbaugh type of pick. On that offensive tackle, he just doesn't want to block you. He wants to leave your imprint several feet into the ground. Very physical run blocker, good pass protector, and that's a John Harbaugh type of pick. So I think the Giants will take a little bit to gel at the first part of the season, which is good because weeks 11 through 18, I think that's the toughest part of their schedule, but I think they will get better as the year goes along. Starting with week 11, they have Jacksonville at home, Indianapolis on the road, which could be a tough game if Indianapolis can stay healthy. San Francisco at home, at Seattle, Cleveland at home, at Detroit, at Dallas, and then Philadelphia. Those last 3 games specifically, Detroit, Dallas, and Philadelphia, possible NFC playoff implications. The San Francisco and Seattle games also. So if the Giants don't make the playoffs, if they have wins in any of those games, I think they can affect the NFC playoff picture or the NFC East division picture, depending on how they fare against Philadelphia and Dallas the last 2 weeks of the season. But it's a tough stretch at the end of the season, so I don't think the Giants will make the playoffs this year, but I think that as the year goes on, they will get better, and they will affect who does make the playoffs. Then you have Philadelphia, weeks 3 through 7, similar to the Cowboys. A bit of a tough stretch at Chicago, the Rams at home, Jacksonville at home, Carolina at home, and Dallas at home. So 4 NFC games, the Jacksonville game, obviously the AFC game, and all of those games could have implications for the number 1 seed overall. Chicago in the north, the Rams in the west, Carolina in the south, and then the game with Dallas. But I think that the Eagles need to win all 4 of those games to lock up a number 1 seed in the NFC. Even though that's weeks 3 through 7 early in the season, I think all of those games are going to be big playoff implication games. So you have to remember, last year the Broncos won home field advantage over the Patriots because the Patriots lost to the Raiders in week 1 of the year. And that game was the deciding game as to who got home field advantage. Later on, weeks 14 through 18, Philadelphia at the end of the year hosts Indianapolis, Seattle, and Houston, and then they go to San Francisco and the Giants the last 2 weeks of the year. Seattle, Houston, back-to-back, 2 very good defenses last year, are going to be physical games for the Eagles. And then after Houston, that physical game, which I think Philadelphia has an advantage, it's late in the year, Houston is a dome team. The Eagles then have to fly across country to San Francisco, and then they have to go down the coast to play the Giants. Those last 2 games, everybody's going to be fighting for playoff spots, NFC East on the line. Even though I think the Eagles will win the NFC East this year, like I said, during the Dallas' schedule, whoever wins those 2 games, if Dallas or the Eagles sweep it, I think they're going to win the NFC East. And like I just said, the Giants could affect playoff implications at the end of the year. Then you end with Washington, weeks 1 through 11. Very difficult schedule. If they're going to have any playoff aspirations, they have to do well early. And then the back end of their schedule, they can maybe make up some ground, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. They start out at Philadelphia and at Dallas, and I think those are 2 big NFC East games. If Washington goes 0-2, I think they're probably out of the NFC East race, and that could be a bad start to the season because even though their next 3 games are at home, they host Seattle, Indianapolis, and the Giants. I think catching Indianapolis early is a break, and a little bit of a break catching the Giants earlier in the year. But I think the Giants will be good later on. Then after the Giants home game, Washington goes across country to San Francisco. Then they have a bye. Then they have Philadelphia at home, the Rams at home, at the Giants, and at Cincinnati. Those last 4 games after the bye, 3 of them at home, 3 of them NFC teams. I think the Commanders are going to have to do well in those games to have a shot at the playoffs. I think they're going to miss out on the playoffs again this year. Hopefully they can be healthier than they were last year. But I think Washington misses out on the playoffs. Moving to the NFC North now, we're going to start with Chicago. Weeks 5 through 9, at Atlanta, New England, at Seattle, Tampa Bay. 3 NFC games, 2 of them on the road. I think the Seattle game is going to be big. It's going to be a measuring stick for the Bears. I think the Bears are going to be much better this year. I love their first-round draft pick, the safety out of Oregon. Everybody had him going earlier in the draft to Minnesota, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute. But I think that's a great pick for them. Their safeties were kind of the weak spot on their defense last year, and I think Chicago is going to have a great year this year. Then later on, weeks 12 through 18, is when Chicago needs to take control of the NFC North if they're going to win it. They go to Detroit, have Jacksonville at home, at Miami, at Buffalo, and then Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, division games the last 3 weeks. The game at Detroit, I believe, is a Thanksgiving Day game. That's going to be a big one. The winner, I think, will take control of the NFC North. Then 3 AFC games in a row, Jacksonville, at Miami, at Buffalo. The Buffalo game, I think, will be a challenge for them. But then ending 3 games in the division, home against the Packers, home against Detroit, and then at Minnesota. If they can win 2 of those 3 or sweep all 3 of them, I think they're going to win the NFC North, and the Bears are my pick to win the NFC North this year. I think Ben Johnson has them on the right track. I think Caleb Williams will be better. And I think they had a good draft, and I think that they are moving in the right direction. Following Detroit, back into their schedule is a more difficult part. Weeks 10 through 12, they have New England, and Tampa, and Chicago all at home. I think they need to win all three of those games to make the playoffs. And then weeks 15 to 18 at Minnesota, the Giants, at Chicago, at Green Bay. 3 division games all on the road. So if they want to hope at the division title, they're going to have to win the 3 early games that they have at home. And then win at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3 of those division games on the road at the end of the year. Like I mentioned previously with the Giants, Detroit getting the Giants at home late in the year, I think the Giants will be a better team and push Detroit. So if Detroit doesn't win that one, their playoff hopes could be dashed, especially if they don't win 2 of those 3 division games. Green Bay has a tough stretch starting in week 4. At Tampa, Chicago, Dallas at home, at Detroit, Carolina, at New England, Minnesota. Having Chicago and Dallas back-to-back, I think will test their defense, especially if Micah Parsons isn't back from his torn ACL that happened late in the year. Green Bay suffered a lot of injuries last year. Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson, Micah Parsons, couple 3 defensive backs. They're just really beat up by the end of the year, and that cost them a better seed in the playoffs and maybe the NFC North. If they can stay healthy, they'll do better. But having Chicago and Dallas back-to-back are going to be tough games. And then at Detroit, Carolina, who won the NFC South last year, even though they're division champion, I think they're going to be better. I think that's going to be a challenge game. At New England, and then Minnesota at home. I think the Bears are going to win that one. And then the last 3 weeks of the schedule, Green Bay is at Chicago, Houston at home, Detroit at home. That Houston game, I think in a way could be a little bit of a trap game for Green Bay, sandwiched between Chicago and Detroit. But they do have Dome Team Houston at home. We'll see if the Houston defense can contain Green Bay's offense. But those 3 games could end up potentially costing Green Bay either the NFC North or a playoff spot. Lastly, in the North, we're going to look at the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to start out with, was not excited by their draft. Everyone had them picking the safety from Oregon, pick 17, 19, whatever Minnesota picked last year here in the draft. Instead, they took a defensive tackle who's 6'6", 325. Many people had him as the best defensive lineman or defensive tackle in the draft, but he only played 90 plays this past season. He had a foot issue that cost him most of the season, and then at the combine, during the medical checks, they found another foot issue. He's supposed to be ready to go, but I was not thrilled by that pick. Yes, Minnesota needed to improve their interior defensive line, but safety Harrison Smith most likely retiring, and with the potential next generation Harrison Smith on the board, they passed on him to take a defensive tackle. Then they took another defensive tackle in the 2nd round, I think it was, or the 3rd round maybe. So they took a couple of defensive tackles. They didn't address the safety issue until the 4th round. Wasn't crazy about that. And I think that's why Minnesota's going to step back this year. Not to mention the quarterback issues with Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy, Kyler Murray, neither one of them necessarily inspires confidence. The rest of the offense is very good. But that quarterback issue could pull them back, and I think Minnesota finishes at the bottom of the division. They start out with Green Bay at home, at Chicago, at Tampa. I think Minnesota has a chance to start out 0-3, not a good start. But they do need a good start because weeks 7 through 15 are going to be a challenge. Indianapolis at home, and week leading up to that game, be ready to hear everything about the greatest comeback in NFL history when Minnesota a couple of years ago was down 33-0 to Indianapolis and came back and won in overtime. Then at Detroit, Buffalo, at Green Bay, San Francisco. Tough stretch there. On the road, 2 division rivals. You get Buffalo at home, even though the fans are going to be excited to seeing Josh Allen play in the Viking Stadium. I don't think that Minnesota's going to be able to hang with Buffalo. San Francisco at home, Atlanta at home, Carolina at home. 3 straight NFC games that they're going to have to win all 3, I think, in order to even have a hope for the playoffs. And then at New England, and then Detroit at home towards the end of the season. So don't have a lot of faith in Minnesota this year. I think that's portion of the schedule is going to slowly push them back and leave them behind the rest of the NFC North. NFC South, you're starting with Atlanta, which has a very manageable schedule. I like their offense. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. I just don't know who's going to be quarterback. Penix or Tua. They're both injury prone. I think the good thing is that they're both left-handed, so the offensive line doesn't have to adjust to one being right-handed and one being left-handed. But Atlanta has a manageable schedule. Weeks 5 through 10, Baltimore and Chicago both at home, then at Tampa, Cincinnati, at Kansas City. So I think that's actually the toughest part of their schedule. The Tampa game is going to be important for the NFC South. Cincinnati is going to be a challenge. Chicago, I think, will be a good measuring stick. It's a home game. And as I said, I think Chicago is going to win the NFC North. But I think that's a measuring stick for Atlanta to see if they're really a contender or not. And then they end the season with Tampa Bay, New Orleans at home, and then Carolina on the road. 3 division games to end the season. I think that if Atlanta doesn't make the playoffs, and I'm not sure they will this year, even though they finished strong last year, they have a new head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who many people had him as the top coaching prospect for NFL coaches, for the NFL coaching carousel this last year, till John Harbaugh was fired. Stefanski took Cleveland to the playoffs twice, which is no small feat. So he's well respected in the NFL at the GM level, at the ownership level. So he's a good coach, and we'll see what he can do. I don't know if Atlanta makes playoffs this year, but those last 3 games, I think they will affect who wins the division. Carolina, weeks 16 through 18, that's what you get for winning the division. They have a tough schedule for a long stretch this year, so if they can get started fast out of the gate, that'll give them confidence, which they'll need, because starting in week 6, they have Philadelphia on the road, Tampa at home, Green Bay on the road, and then Denver. Tough stretch there, 2 road games, 2 home games, followed by New Orleans on the road. A lot of people are looking past New Orleans, but they did finish the year quite strong, had a good stretch. They like their quarterback. They got him some more weapons on offense. And then it's Baltimore at home, at Tampa, at Minnesota. Minnesota's defense is good, but like I said, I'm not excited necessarily about the quarterback situation. And then for Carolina, New Orleans at home, Cincinnati at home, at Pittsburgh, and then Seattle and Atlanta to end the season. Seattle is going to be a good test for Carolina to see if they really are a contender for the Super Bowl. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, 2 AFC North teams there. The Pittsburgh game is on the road in the cold. That might cost the Panthers a little bit. But those last 2 games, Seattle and Atlanta, could affect playoff positioning and who wins the NFC South. New Orleans, they're improving. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think next year is a little bit more realistic, but they are improving their roster and they are getting better. Weeks 9 through 15, they have Cleveland. As I mentioned in the AFC schedule, I like Cleveland. I think they're going to take a step back since they lost their defense coordinator, Jim Schwartz, and not sure what's going on with the offense, especially the quarterback position, but Cleveland's defense is still going to be good, so I listed that as a tough game. Then Carolina at home, at Chicago, at Cincinnati, 2 back-to-back road games. It's getting colder weather. Those are both outdoor stadiums, could affect the Saints. Green Bay at home, and then at Carolina, at Tampa. So they get Carolina twice in that stretch, which could affect the NFC South race. But I don't think New Orleans is there yet, but I think that they may affect who does win the NFC South. Lastly, Tampa, I think their schedule is very difficult. If they can stay away from injuries, I think they have a good chance to win the South, and they are my pick to win the South if they can stay healthy. If they can't, I think Carolina is going to win it. So I think this is going to be a toss-up. This one went right down to the end of the year last year between Carolina and Tampa. I think it's going to go that way again this year. But if Tampa can stay healthy, I think they're going to win it. But Panthers, if they can navigate that schedule, they're on the rise, they can win it. So it's a toss-up, but I'm going to give the edge to Tampa. Baker Mayfield is as tough as they come, and the team likes playing for him with all the injuries they had last year. The younger wide receivers were able to develop some, get some game experience. They did lose Mike Evans, but that experience that they had with Baker last year, missing a couple running backs last year, I think Tampa's going to come back stronger. They do have a tough schedule. They start out at Cincinnati, home to Cleveland, Minnesota, and Green Bay right in a row, and then at Dallas, Pittsburgh, at Carolina, at Atlanta, at Chicago. So that stretch there, if they're going to lose some games, they need to lose to Cincinnati and Cleveland and Pittsburgh. The three of their AFC North games that they play are in the first part of the season. Minnesota and Green Bay, I think Tampa needs to win both of those early. The game at Dallas, I think, is going to be important later on in the playoffs. At Carolina, at Atlanta, two important games for the NFC South. And then the game at Chicago could affect playoff seeding later on in the year. And then the back half of their schedule, weeks 11 to 18, is quite the stretch. At Detroit, Carolina, the Chargers, at Baltimore, New Orleans, Atlanta on the road, the Rams at home, and then New Orleans on the road. So starting with at Detroit, tough place to play, and then Carolina at home, then Chargers at home. Tough slate there. Baltimore on the road, Tampa going to Baltimore later in the year. It's going to be a little bit colder there. New Orleans at home, at Atlanta, the Rams, and then New Orleans on the road. I think Tampa needs to win all three of those division games in order to win the NFC South. At Atlanta and New Orleans are going to be tough. And then those two games sandwiched around the Rams at home is going to be a fight. The Rams are going to be fighting to win their division. Most people have the Rams, or many of the experts have the Rams as the pick to win the Super Bowl this coming season if they can stay healthy. So that's going to be a big test. But again, I think I'm going to give that a slight edge to Tampa if they can stay healthy. But if they stumble, Carolina's right there, and I think Carolina's going to win the division if Tampa falters. Finally, the NFC West, Arizona. Schedule makers were not very kind to Mike LaFleur, the new head coach. I think that the Cardinals are going to really struggle coming out of the gate. They start out at the Chargers, Seattle at home, at San Francisco, at the Giants. So those first four games, the Chargers were my pick to win the AFC West, Seattle, defending Super Bowl champions, at San Francisco, who, if they're healthy, are going to be a tough out. We'll talk about them more here in a minute. At the Giants, so at San Francisco, then Arizona goes cross country to play the Giants. Detroit at home, at the Rams, Denver at home. So they get the Rams on the road, facing that very good defense. Then they go back home and get the Denver defense. So back-to-back good defenses there. Then at Dallas, at Seattle. So after playing Denver, then they have to face the improved Dallas Cowboys defense. And then on the road to Seattle, the Rams back again at home, and then at Kansas City. So a four-game stretch at Dallas, at Seattle, the Rams at home, at Kansas City. Extremely tough slate. I don't care if it's a first-year coach or if it's Andy Reid on that stretch or Kevin O'Connell or whoever it is, Sean McVay. That's a tough stretch of games right there. And then Washington and Philadelphia to close out the first 13 weeks. Washington and Philadelphia at home. I can see the Cardinals going winless early in the season. I think they're going to probably get a couple of wins there. They're going to catch somebody on an off week, or the Arizona game is going to be sandwiched in between two teams that an opponent is going to be looking at. So for example, they might catch Dallas napping. They might catch Detroit napping with a tough game in between. But it's going to be a tough stretch. I think Arizona probably is going to end up with the number one pick in the draft next year. The last few weeks of their schedule is a little bit easier. However, with the quarterbacks they have, Jacoby Brissett, he and the team aren't talking very well right now. He's kind of the projected starter for the Cardinals, and he's not at their voluntary minicamp right now. Gardner Minshew doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. He's a capable backup, but he's been beat up. And then rookie Carson Beck, by way of Georgia and University of Miami. Now he's in his rookie season with the Cardinals. Not a lot of confidence in the quarterback position there. They drafted Jeremiah Love, number 3 overall, who some people had as the best running back in the draft. They have Trey McBride, one of the better tight ends in the NFL. They have Marvin Harrison Jr., who came on later at the end of the season last year when he and Jacoby had a good chemistry working together, but he's been beat up a little bit. Not very confident about their offensive line, but if they can work together, get some momentum early in the season, the back half of the season, maybe they can string some wins together. It just depends on how they're going to do with that tough schedule early in the season. I would encourage the Cardinals ownership, don't be quick on Mike LaFleur. This is a brutal schedule for any head coach. This is his first head coaching job. I'll give him a mulligan on this first season. Then next you have the Rams, who are my pick, assuming they stay healthy, to win the NFC West. They start out with San Francisco and the Giants at home, then at Denver, at Philadelphia, and Buffalo. Tough early stretch for the Rams. Very winnable games, but they get San Francisco early at home. Early at home, the game's in Australia. Then they come back, face the Giants. The back-to-back road games, Denver and Philadelphia. 2 good defenses, 2 potential Super Bowl teams. That Philadelphia game could have NFC number 1 seed implications. And then Buffalo at home. Then the back half of their schedule, weeks 12 to 18, Green Bay and Kansas City at home, at San Francisco, Dallas at home, at Seattle, Tampa, and Seattle at home. That end stretch is going to determine, I think, the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, plus who wins the NFC West. I'm liking the Rams. They got most everybody back offensively. Their weak spot on their defense was their secondary, and they got both of Kansas City's starting corners are now wearing Rams uniforms, one by trade, one by free agency. So their defense should be a little bit better, especially on the corners, which they didn't need it to be a lot better to possibly make the Super Bowl this year. Their secondary was their Achilles heel last year, and it came back to bite them at the end of the season, and that's how they didn't make it any farther in the playoffs, and that led to the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. So I'm going to give the Rams the benefit of the doubt and pick them to win the NFC West this year. But it's going to be contested, especially that number 1 seed late in the year. Those last few games, Kansas City's the only AFC game. Green Bay, Dallas, home games outside of the division. Tampa, home game outside of the division. And then 3 division games on the road at San Francisco, on the road at Seattle, and then Seattle at home. San Francisco, I think Kyle Shanahan. I personally thought Kyle Shanahan should have gotten Coach of the Year. Last year, the team was decimated by injuries. At one point, it was Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and everybody else wearing name tags every week as to who they were going to throw the ball to. The defense had linebackers that literally were off the street after a few weeks. So that's going to, bring their defense down. They just ran out of healthy bodies at the end of the year. So we'll see what they can do. If they can stay healthy, I like them to make the playoffs again. Week 10 to 17 is going to be that determining factor. They go to Dallas, have Minnesota and Seattle at home, at the Giants, the Rams at home, at the Chargers, at Kansas City, and then Philadelphia at home. The game at Dallas, I think, is going to be important in the playoffs. Minnesota and Seattle back-to-back. Minnesota, I think, might be a game where they can, there might be a little bit of a speed bump there for them if they're looking past Minnesota getting to Seattle. The Giants, cross-country, end of the year, I think the Giants are going to be better. Rams at home, big game. At the Chargers, at Kansas City, 2 tough games back-to-back. Chargers are going to be fighting, I think, for the AFC West division title and for good playoff seeding. Kansas City is going to be fighting for the playoffs. And then Philadelphia at home in week 17. I think that's going to be the effect or an effective game for the playoffs and the overall number 1 seed. Seattle, I think they're going to come back and make the playoffs, but I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. They lost Kenneth Walker. They lost Clint Kubiak. Lost a couple players off the defense. So I think they're going to be down a little bit. Their schedule is difficult but manageable. Starting in week 4, they have the Chargers and San Francisco at home back-to-back, at Denver, and then Kansas City at home. So 2 AFC West teams back-to-back, and then Chicago. So they get part of that AFC schedule out of the way. San Francisco and Chicago both at home. Those games could have playoff implications. And then the back half of their schedule, at San Francisco, Dallas and the Giants at home, at Philadelphia, the Rams at home, and then at Carolina and at the Rams. That ending stretch, those last 4 games, 3 on the road, 2 in the division against the Rams, 2 out of the division at Philadelphia and at Carolina, are going to be tough games. Carolina and Philadelphia going to be fighting for playoff spots and winning their own division. All of those games are NFC games, so Seattle's going to have their A game every week. I don't know if they're going to be able to maintain that momentum all the way through weeks 12 through 18. I think they're going to probably lose a couple of games in there. It just depends on which games they lose that may or may not cost them the division and their playoff seeding. So that's my look at the NFC schedule and difficult games. Once again, my division picks are Philadelphia, Chicago, Tampa with a slight edge over Carolina, and then the Rams. Don't forget to check out my thoughts on the AFC schedules and teams. And once again, this has been the Football Debates Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Debates. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll look to see you on our next episode.